260 horsepower, which is above the current level of a MotoGP prototype. Torque is 300 Newton meters, at least twice that of any production power cruiser today. All this was available 15 years ago in one production motorcycle. This is the second coming of the ambitious German designer Friedel Munch. This is a Munch Mammoth 2000.
Ich träume und die Welt erzittert.
After the company's bankruptcy in 1971, Friedel repeatedly attempted to restore production, resulting in the introduction of new motorcycle models. Between 1973 and 1977, Munch produced the Horax 1400 motorcycle. Then in 1984, the Titan 1600 was released, and already in 1989, after the construction of the Titan 2000, Munch finally decided to move away from motorcycle production forever. Most likely, this is what would have happened if not for one person, named Thomas Petch. Thomas was an ardent fan of Munch's works. Following the fate of Friedel and his company, which experienced both ups and downs, after its bankruptcy, the idea of reviving the brand was ignited. In his head, an image of a modern motorcycle is being created with all the features of brutality and monumentality of the classic Mammoth. In the summer of 1977, Thomas boards a return flight where a nice gentleman sits next to him. In a heartfelt conversation with him, Petch brings up the topic of Munch's motorcycles, to which he hears that Friedel Munch is the man's neighbor. And Thomas, without hesitation, asked him about the possibility of meeting Friedel. A little later, Thomas receives a call from Friedel Munch, who would like to meet him. The result of that fateful meeting would be Munch Mammoth 2000. Even today, 15 years later, the second Mammoth Munch simply amazes with his characteristics. The 1998cc turbocharged inline-4 engine, based on a Cosworth 16-valve cylinder head, produces a whopping 260 horsepower and 295 Newton meters of torque, with peak output reached at just 3,000 RPM. For comparison, the most powerful production sport bike, or rather hyperbike, Kawasaki H2R has 326 horsepower and 165 Newton meters of torque. The Triumph Rocket 3 is considered one of the most powerful power cruisers available today, with 146 horsepower and 221 Newton meters of torque. Needless to say, in the early 2000s, this monster could easily deal with giants like Hayabusa. Forget production motorcycles. At that time, even MotoGP prototypes had less power. It wasn't until the arrival of the Aprilia RS Cube in 2002 with its pneumatic valve train that they reached the level of 240 to 260 horsepower. The engine itself ran very smoothly, with a velvety feel. It started pulling from just 1,000 RPM, and the peak was reached at just over 5,000, which is completely atypical for a motorcycle. But the originality of its design didn't end with the engine. The motorcycle's dry weight was a monstrous 354 kilograms. And that's despite the fact that the bike used magnesium alloys and carbon fiber parts. Due to this weight, for better handling and power delivery, a pair of shocks from White Power were installed in the lower part of the motorcycle, right behind the oil pan. The massive swing arm and huge exhaust simply left no other room. This was another of the many exceptional technical solutions on this unique motorcycle. The front suspension consisted of a 43mm inverted Öhlins fork. All that power was stopped by a pair of 320mm brake discs, coupled with two, get this, 8-piston calipers up front and a 280mm brake disc with a 2-piston caliper in the rear. Thomas Petch, who took on the responsibility of producing the new Mammoth, inspired by the idea of reviving the Munch brand, created a truly exclusive, incredibly powerful monster that not everyone could tame. Journalists who were lucky enough to test ride this motorcycle had the following to say about it. The engine of this motorcycle is something unimaginable. Even at 3,000 RPM, the power output's comparable to a meteorite. The performance chart must look like a skyscraper. I was advised to go full throttle. You could probably twist the throttle all the way if you took some sedatives, studied the bike well, and did it somewhere with a lot of space, preferably in a straight line. Because in the corners, this thing's very unpredictable. In those years, there was no such thing as traction control. At one point, I thought the clutch was slipping, but it was the 200mm rear tire. All the way up to 4th gear, the motorcycle left black stripes on the asphalt. And this was all with the engine detuned from 300 horsepower to 260 and limited to a top speed at 250 km per hour. As Petch figured that would be more than enough, and in principle he wasn't on. But as time would tell, the second Mammoth met the same fate as the first. Despite the excitement for the bike and Thomas's enthusiasm, production proved to be too unprofitable. The frame, wheels, swing arm, clutch, and gearbox were all designed and built around this turbo monster from Cosworth, which of course cost a fortune. This ultimately led to a price tag of €86,000 in 2002. Later, Petch would even have to sell several units at double the price. Finally, in April 2002, the entrepreneur from Würzburg pulled the emergency brake and stopped production. In total, 15 units were built, 8 of which were sold. The remaining 7 stayed with Thomas Petch. But despite the setbacks, the motorcycles of the great Munch deserve our attention just as much as the other rare and exotic bikes on our channel.